accident. I need emergency medical assistance.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2022 survival thriller film Frost, a film that is directed by Brandon Slagle and it stars Devaney Pinn and Vernon Wells. Now the film focuses on a father and daughter, Abby and Grant. They haven't seen each other for about 5 years. The father lives out in the woods somewhere and the daughter visits him out of the blue. He's very pleased to see her, but also notices that she's heavily pregnant. They're a bit estranged, they've got a strained relationship, but they make up somewhat and decide to do a little bit more bonding and head out in the car for like a fishing trip type thing. Disaster strikes, the car crashes, leaving them both exposed. She's trapped in the car, heavily pregnant and injured, and he, the father Grant, decides to go off and try and seek help as fast as he can. While he is away, she becomes increasingly at risk of the elements and other things such as wildlife. Right, what are my thoughts on Frost? Well, as I mentioned, this is like a survival thriller with some horror elements thrown in there, especially at the end. It does get quite gruesome and a little bit difficult to watch near the end, I'm not going to lie. But for the most part, it's a thriller. Now, it's quite an enclosed thriller as well. For pretty much the whole film, the only people you really see on screen are Vernon Wells and Devaney Pinn as father and daughter. And for the most part, it is Devaney Pinn as Abby who is carrying this film. So any film like this, where it's like a survival thriller, things like 127 Hours, all that kind of stuff, you've got to have a strong lead carrying this film, and thankfully, I think we definitely do get that with. And I hope I keep saying this name right. Anyway, Devaney Pinn. She carries the film tremendously well, and even though this is a low-budget film, it's one of those low-budget films that's got a high level of polish to it, some decent production values, and a little bit of care and attention put into it. So it's got some strong direction. It's got some strong visuals, but it's also got some strong performances. Now, Vernon Wells, is a veteran of the industry. Mad Max, Commando, Inner Space, all that kind of good stuff. We all know that Vernon Wells is a veteran of the industry, and he always generally delivers a good performance, and he's fine here. I thought the dynamics between these two and father and daughter worked particularly well. I believed them. In a sense of being a father and daughter, you believed this difficult relationship that they had. I maybe would have liked a little bit more time for that relationship to be established at the beginning, but it's one of those films that likes to kind of get on with it and get into the situation fairly quickly. But I think it probably would have helped the film a little bit more to learn a little bit more about these two characters, especially Devaney, and what was kind of making her tick. Because when this car crash happens and she's left in this car alone, exposed to the elements, from that point on, all you've really got is her carrying this film. Occasionally you see Vernon Wells out in the woods on the walkie-talkie trying to talk to his daughter, that kind of stuff. And I think one of the things that lets this film down is like you don't necessarily know what the timescales are between them talking on the walkie-talkie. And what I mean by that is fairly early on in the film, when she's like crashed and she's left on her own in this car, this like fishing tackle. So she's like going to the worms to eat them. But it feels like she's going into those worms, eating them 5 minutes after the crash. So you don't really get that sense of desperation that she's absolutely starving and she needs to eat. In that situation, if we hadn't eaten for a day or two, you know, I'd be tucking into worms as well, but it almost feels like she's tucking into them way, way too soon. So you don't get that sense of threat of time. Time is the enemy here, you know what I mean? She's exposed to the elements, she could freeze to death, the baby's at risk because she's heavily pregnant, and she's starving to death, and she, you know, she's severely injured and bleeding out and stuff like that. And I don't think the film leaned into that enough. You get the obligatory gruesome scenes here and there of her trying to release herself and You don't necessarily get the limbs chopped off as you do in 127 hours sort of thing, but it's not so far off. It definitely makes you wince when you're watching it here and there, this film. And then it delves into the mental health of the character late into the film. The film absolutely goes down a really gruesome route, I think, by the end, and it ain't giving you an ending that you not necessarily think this film deserves, and I don't want to spoil that in any way, but it was an uncomfortable end to the movie, is what I would say. Now, part of me is a bit troubled by that because I kind of wanted a happy ending for these two characters, father and daughter just reconciled, baby on the way. And if you watch the trailer, it's not a spoiler. Her waters break, sort of thing, while she's in this car waiting for her father. She's attacked by wolves. All these sort of things going off, and you're kind of thinking, by God, this character deserves a happy ending. Don't necessarily expect the ending that you want with this film. I thought the ending was quite shocking. Some would argue maybe unnecessary, but it certainly doesn't pull any punches, and you could argue as well it was quite a brave ending to this film. So just be aware when you go into this film, much of this film is going to be focused on Abby, this character, in this car, trapped, facing the elements. Excuse me. And that's it. There's very little else this film is going to offer. It's just really, it's an intense focus on this character trapped in this vehicle and the trials and tribulations she has to face to try and survive. If that's her sort of thing, then you'll probably get quite a bit out of this film, because I don't think there's anything wrong with the performances or the production values for the most part. And it does keep you engaged throughout, even if it is a little bit difficult to watch at certain points. So I'm a little bit unsure how to score this one, because I didn't dislike the film. I thought it was, like I say, well made, but I do think it's flawed as well, and it is quite, I don't know what the right word is really. It's just this woman in a car facing the elements really, and I do feel like it could have been a little bit more focused, a little bit more on Vernon Wells and the after effects of everything that happened as well, sort of thing. So I'm going to give this one. Do you know what? I'm going to be a little bit kind. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. I'm a little bit, I was going to score this one a 5 out of 10, but as I'm talking about it, I do think it actually deserves a 6, because they've put a lot of effort into this film, but it isn't necessarily going to be a comfortable watch for many people, myself included, if I'm being honest. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful. Check out the film if you get the opportunity, and I will of course be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.